This is our Independence Garden. We were in our second year with this garden, and what we're trying to achieve here is a garden that's based on permaculture principles, an ecological model. And by that, what we're looking to is, rather than in more traditional ways where everything is grown separately and disconnected, we're really looking to nature here to try and learn from how does a forest grow? What are the interconnections between the plants that help it develop in a sustainable way where there aren't lots of interventions required. So you'll notice behind me here we've got all kinds of flowers and herbs. Right here there's a little fruit sage. Behind me is more herbs, sages. This is comfrey right here. Now all of the plants we have in the garden, just like in a developed ecosystem, work together. So we've purposely chosen plants that have a number of functions that can benefit everything that we're trying to grow here. So it's kind of creating this vibrant ecosystem with diverse insect life and plant life that supports the food that we grow in these center rows over here. Now, so if we look at something like the comfrey, it's kind of a nondescript plant, but it has a number of uses. It's got antiseptic qualities, so the sap in it helps with healing wounds and whatnot. But more importantly for our garden, I suppose as a gardener you can make use of it for that. But in terms of the soil, it has very deep tap roots, and it mines minerals that are important to plant growth, like potassium. So instead of going to all the trouble of hauling plants and materials to make big compost piles and stuff, what we're using in this garden is very simply letting the plants do the work for us. So this plant, from time to time, we tear the leaves off and toss it on the soil surface, and you'll notice that we have litter around the soil surface. It starts to replicate what you see in a forest floor. Now, when you do that, when you keep that organic material right on the soil surface like that, you're also creating habitat for microorganisms, insects that are beneficial to the life of the soil. They help to, right in place, break all this organic material down and in a gradual way make the nutrients accessible to the plants we're growing. Similarly, we have a yarrow plant over here. We've got lots of yarrow growing around the whole perimeter. That's another plant that mines micronutrients. It's pretty, and it also attracts insects. So it's got multiple uses. It feeds beneficial insects that we're trying to attract to the garden, and also by cutting the foliage back and leaving that on the soil surface, you're getting different types of micronutrients going in the soil. So when you think about it, in our traditional gardening practices, we tend to do just the opposite. We want to clear everything off. We tend to monocrop in how we grow in more traditional agricultural approaches, where we strip the soil bare. We get rid of all this diversity, and then we spend lots of money on chemicals and other procedures to try and repair the harm that we've created. If you think of things that we consider weeds, like dandelions, they actually proliferate because we have things like lawns, where we have soil that's open that allows those weeds to get established. When you start to develop a vibrant ecosystem with all these plants growing densely, we don't really have a problem with weeds here. And we even like to challenge the notion of looking at plants as weeds. We've got a little sign over there that says weeds are plants whose virtues have not yet been discovered. If you think of the dandelion, they actually are very rich in iron. Now, we've had a bit of iron deficiency in our soil, so leaving the few dandelions that do spring up around the place, doing the same thing, tearing the leaves off, leaving it on the soil surface, helps bring up iron from deeper in the soil and recirculate it so it's accessible to the plants we want to grow. So in permaculture, what you're endeavoring to do is really stack the layers of things that you have going on in the garden. So multiple purpose plants like that is one way. Certainly what we've seen happen when we started to do this is a real increase in the insect life in the right around the garden, and that predominantly has been those beneficial insects. So lady beetles, parasitic wasps. We've got our herb plants. Today they're not as lively, but when it's sunnier out, you just see them covering the herbs and plants around this border. Wasps, bees, and they're really interesting creatures that help us out a lot in here. So the parasitic wasp will lay their eggs on other insects and larvae, caterpillars and things that would otherwise be eating our plants. And when you have layers like that, eventually the whole system becomes more balanced. So it's okay if we have, for instance, we had tomato hornworms over there. Well, we've got so many wasps that look to them for food that a few hornworms left in the garden, the wasps naturally take care of them. They feed and provide a host for the wasps. The system remains in balance, and that's the goal. It's not something that happens quickly. You need to sit and observe and work with nature rather than try and dominate it. That's our goal in here. It's probably fitting that we have a garden seat in here, because part of that is fighting the tendency to go with our usual approach to things, where we're going to dominate, we're going to work, we're going to control this environment, and we look for quick fixes. This is more about sitting back and observing and learning from what's happening around us, learning from nature, working with that to reduce how much energy we're expending, and let the system develop naturally. Typically that takes a few years before an ecosystem starts to knit together. I think we're well on our way, but when I mention layers of things, we certainly are looking at the soil as the beginning layer. We've done a lot of work on that. We use a no-till approach so that we're not disrupting worms and other beneficial microorganisms that are getting going in the soil. We've introduced a beneficial fungus that helps with the structure of the soil, and actually helps with open up roots so that the nutrients can penetrate them. The little fibers of the fungus serve their function in that way. So there's a lot going on at each layer. What we're trying to do behind us here, we've got planted some fruit bushes. Those will start to come up. The whole area will become hedged in these multiple use plants, herbs and flowers, and also fruit bushes. So we start to layer up and get higher around the area. That takes us to the next level with animals. You notice we've got a birdhouse here. We have a birdhouse gourd over there, which we grew in the garden, and that's been host to a couple of families of wrens. So you start to go up the chain in terms of having birds, as well as the insects, as well as the microorganisms, all working together. So I'm hoping that eventually, I think a sign that we're reaching that peak of vibrant ecosystem is when we start to see another layer of predators in here. Snakes, perhaps. We haven't seen too many toads. It would be nice to see some of those. So we start getting into the reptiles as well as the birds. It's a huge difference from where we started 2 years ago. When you look around and see all this biodiversity around us, this was barren, compacted clay and rubble, and we've had to do a great deal of work on just rehabilitating the soil that's been in place here. And we've concentrated that on these narrow beds. That gives you some information on how we're trying to approach the garden, kind of from a philosophical point of view. At another time, we'll look at what we're actually doing in the food growing rows here and explain how we're demonstrating crop rotation and other principles in the garden beside us here.